Now you look at what's going on when it comes to immigration. And yes, both parties are culpable. The entire federal government has completely failed us in this moment. But we're seeing, rather than say, look, let's address those that are here, let's secure the border, let's find a path to move forward so that we fix the front door as opposed to keeping the back door cracked open.
Right.
The Democratic Party says no. The Democratic Party is refusing because they want to have a new generation of second-class citizens in this country, in my opinion, that continue the welfare state in this nation.
I have a very special guest from the beautiful, windy city of Chicago, Alderman Raymond Lopez, who is not afraid to speak out and speak loudly, even to his own Democratic Party members, about the crisis happening right now in Chicago, in this beautiful city, and the number of migrants that have been flooding into the city and what it has done, not only to the people in Chicago, but how it has affected and had a ripple effect literally across the board in our nation. And when he tells you, and you hear this, you're going to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, how many tens of millions of dollars, your taxpayer dollars, the taxpayer dollars from not only the city of Chicago and the people of Illinois, but from across the nation, how much money is going to house, not just feed, but get cell phones and pay for NGOs and clothe and take care of all of these migrants. It is going to infuriate you. I spoke with residents who have had their neighborhoods literally taken over. Wives and daughters can't even go outside without being honked at or catcalled or concerned. I mean, some of the kids in the neighborhood I was in, some of the girls are 13, 14 years old and are scared to walk home from school by themselves. There are men smoking marijuana in the park where children were playing up until like last summer, where now it's completely empty and families aren't even going into the park because it has been completely taken over by single male migrants from Venezuela and other parts of the world, where the city isn't just asking for jackets and clothing and food and whatever you think is a necessity in these frigid, cold months of winter for the migrants. But what they're saying, flat screen televisions are a necessity for the migrants right now as they are being housed in these shelters that used to belong to the community. One of Chicago's favorite aldermans is Raymond Lopez, and he's had enough of this situation. And he has defied his party and President Biden by speaking out against this dereliction of duty and what it is doing to his city and what it is doing to his community. It's Alderman Raymond Lopez next, and he will join us on today's show. But first, I have a quick message from your favorite CEO, Mike Lindell. Yes, Mike Lindell of MyPillow. He has the biggest bedding sale ever of the year. It's huge. Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98. Guys, you cannot beat this. You should buy some of these sheets just to keep them in your closet for the near future. I do that. Because when you need to get new sheets, you want to just reach in there and know, oh, guess what? I only paid $29.98 for this bed sheet. I am so glad I bought it in advance. And even though it's after Christmas, these are the specials that you want to grab right now. A set of pillowcases is only $9.98. Rejuvenate your bed with MyPillow mattress topper. Listen to this. As low as $99.99. You're not going to get cheaper than that. Visit mypillow.com/Carter and enter code CARTER at checkout for the big discounts, including the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98. Go to mypillow.com/Carter. That's CARTER. mypillow.com/Carter. Code Carter, CARTER, or call 1-800-685-7221. I'm so happy to have Raymond Lopez, your alderman, Raymond Lopez from Chicago with me today. I feel like, okay, I feel like Raymond, like we have become friends. I don't know why I have like a great connection with you, but this is only the second time, well, now the third time that we're talking, but I was with you in Chicago this past week, and I just feel like you are such a treasure to the city of Chicago, and the work that you're doing for your constituents goes far beyond what I am used to in Washington, D.C., which is like, I run into lawmakers all the time that don't mind doing a lot for themselves and very little for their constituents. So you're like a breath of fresh air. Thanks for being on the Sara Carter Show.
Sarah, it's my pleasure. And I think what brings us together is our dogs and our love of animals. Cannot go wrong with animal people, ever.
You're so right, Raymond. And we're going to veer off the track of immigration for just 1 second, because you're absolutely right. You have 7 dogs you and your husband have rescued. I mean, it's amazing. Like, your dogs are so friendly and sweet, and some of them were with you at work. When I was in Chicago the other day, they were just huddled right there, hanging out with you, hanging out with everybody in the office. You're such a wonderful human being. And I have a thing for animals, and I agree with you. I've always believed that people that love animals, people that are connected to animals, want to, help out or have animals, are different kinds of people. They
Absolutely.
have more empathy.
Absolutely. And now more than ever, that empathy is what we're missing in society, if you ask me, on every level. So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We saw that in Chicago. Look, I see how the people of Chicago are struggling. This winter is going to be a rough winter. We're already feeling it here in Texas. It's cold. You have, like any major city, you have a crisis with homelessness, with with trying to find space and shelters for the people that are in your cities, in your district. And here you have now accumulation of illegal aliens, illegal migrants that have been given access into the country by the Biden administration. And I think over 29,000 are in Chicago alone, just in shelters right now, or trying to find shelters. Am I right on that number?
You are exactly correct on that number. With more buses anticipated on arriving over the next week, just in time for the blizzard of 2024 next Tuesday. So we'll see how that works out for us.
You've got to be really nervous, because one of the issues, and I think not nervous in the sense for anything to do with you, but nervous for your own constituents, nervous about what could result after this blizzard. Are people going to find places to sleep? Or, could somebody end up losing their life? I mean, these are all very real concerns in Chicago, in the Windy City. And not because of the wind, guys. Look it up. It's not because of the wind. It's because of the politicians. That's what I'm just giving you a hint. But in a city where it gets so cold, and it's so hard, already your resources are being strained. And I was down in Gage Park, thanks to you. This is your area. This is your neighborhood. I'm going to let you explain. But I was there speaking to your constituents, and they were furious with how the Biden administration has handled the immigration crisis, how right now in their own neighborhood, it's overflowing with migrants who have taken up the community center, taken over their streets, and really made it more dangerous for the people in Gage Park than they've ever seen before. And I'll let you get into the details there, because this is your town. These are your constituents, and this is your city. Tell me a little bit about what happened in Gage Park and how it ended up being like a little epicenter for single male migrant men and women that are basically just now kind of taken over.
Well, what we saw over the last several months is that there was really no plan by the city of Chicago to house and shelter these individuals that were being shipped here, not just from Texas, but from Colorado, from New York, and from other points in between, courtesy of Homeland Security. They were just being dropped in the city of Chicago. And at one point, we had 450 individuals at the start of summer living in Chicago police stations. And barring the politics of immigration, what we saw was a humanitarian need where we had to get children and we had to get women, we had to get families out of the police stations, out of the lobbies, and into something a little more humane and controllable, as well as safer for our law enforcement officers trying to work with all of those individuals in front of them. So I had volunteered our Gage Park shelter as a temporary facility for us to process and make safe and healthy decisions for these individuals in a fast, expedient way. While hopefully at that time, in the beginning of the summer, we were hoping that the mayor and the president and everyone could figure out a path forward on how to deal with this situation. Lo and behold, no sooner we got the last one out of police stations when we opened up Gage Park, again, the buses arrived and we wound up with nearly 3,000 individuals a few months later living in police stations and all across the city of Chicago. Because the president and his border czar, Kamala Harris, refused to acknowledge the problem that's right in front of us is that we have a porous border being overrun every day, tens of thousands of individuals coming through every day, and that what was first built to us as a humanitarian crisis of people fleeing Venezuela, then it was expanded to all of South America, and as we see now, it's individuals from all across the globe coming through the access points in California, Arizona, and Texas because they know that we are overwhelmed right now. Bring it home to Chicago and Gage Park. We are now at double capacity what we promised our community. We were told that it would be following the 3 guidelines that I wanted, that it had to be safe, it had to be healthy, and it had to be temporary. The mayor of Chicago, Brendan Johnson, has failed to meet any one of those 3 metrics. As you saw on December 23rd, an individual was shot execution style in front of the shelter. We have drug dealing, prostitution, all kinds of activity going on at that shelter. And that story has repeated itself at all of the nearly 24 city-operated, taxpayer-funded shelters throughout the city of Chicago. And
do we have any idea how much money this is costing the city of Chicago right now? I mean, do we have an estimate, or do you think
$40 million a month is what we're spending right now?
Oh my gosh, $40 million a month. And what's infuriating about this, and I know you feel this way too, Alderman Raymond, and I'm going to ask you to explain Alderman because there's so many of us not from Chicago that want to know what that means. I kept thinking he was an altar boy, guys, but I was like, no, I'm wrong. It's Alderman Raymond Lopez. But what's so infuriating is that the necessity, the need for that money in other areas, especially for children in underprivileged neighborhoods, for the community in and of itself, $40 million a month can go a long way in a city. Are you stunned that there is so much effort being put into this? Let me ask, that's the first question. Second question, who do you blame for this?
Well, I'm not stunned. I'm actually angry because I'm glad that we're at least stepping up to try and help the human condition. But it's infuriating to me that we are spending $40 million a month and still have migrants begging for food, migrants who have no clothing, migrants who have no resources. Where's that money going? It's going into
where is it going?
It's going into the pockets of everyone who says that they're going to help us with these individuals, all of these contractors, all these not-for-profits who say they can do X, Y, and Z to help them, and yet still can't provide 3 basic meals every single day. That's outrageous and shameful in the most American of American cities that this is where we're at. And I blame 2 people in particular. I blame our mayor for failing to come up with a plan, which I know he inherited from the last mayor, Lori Lightfoot, but he has failed to address the situation truthfully in the here and now. And he has failed to hold the next person I blame, Joe Biden, responsible for what's going on here. They have made the border crisis our city's backyard crisis, and we cannot continue down this path. What I do see from the Democratic Party, of which, by the way, I'm a member of, is that they all want to tout Chicago as the great place to have our convention while allowing this migrant crisis to overwhelm us without any kind of resolution. And I'm not just talking about money to support them. I'm talking about adjudicating these asylum claims, cutting off the flow of individuals coming to the city, and stopping the magnets that are pulling them here, which is the illusion that they're going to get everything taken care of them once they arrive here.
You would think this was a bipartisan issue. You think it should be, right? I mean,
Abs-
I think it should be. You're a Democrat. I mean, we can talk. You and I can talk. I'm a conservative. We can sit down and talk. We both care about the human condition. We care about the migrants. We care about the children of Chicago. We care about Americans. We care about our city. Why do you think this has become such a divisive issue? What is it with the current administration that they appear to want this border to be wide open, Raymond? They appear to want to allow people to just come flooding into the country without any plan to take care of them or to take care of us, for that matter.
Well, I think that's where I would disagree with you a little bit, Sarah, because I think that one, the reason this has become so political is because, in particular, my party has become the party of enablement and bad behavior. And we've seen that with crime and violence, and we're seeing it now jump to the next issue, which is the broken immigration system. We have seen where the Democratic Party has veered to the extreme left of left following the George Floyd and BLM movements and police reform, public safety reform and police reform and criminal justice reform, going so far overboard that we're now forgotten about victims and we're all about protecting criminals. Now you look at what's going on when it comes to immigration. And yes, both parties are culpable. The entire federal government has completely failed us in this moment. But we're seeing, rather than say, look, let's address those that are here, let's secure the border, let's find a path to move forward so that we fix the front door as opposed to keeping the back door cracked open.
Right.
The Democratic Party says no. The Democratic Party is refusing because they want to have a new generation of second-class citizens in this country, in my opinion, that continue the welfare state in this nation. And
where are the other Democrats like you? Raymond, where are they at? Like, you must be talking to them. They must be reaching out to you, because where are, the strong, I would say, blue dog Democrats, the Democrats that were like Frank Church, that fought the government on spying on Americans, the Democrats that were standing up for civil rights and civil rights movement and saying, you know what, nobody should be enslaved. Nobody should be a working class group or second class group. Everybody should have an opportunity. What happened to those Democrats?
Aside from my official capacity, I'm also running for Congress, as you know. And I will tell you that as I'm walking through my district, people tell me that I think the answer to your question is very simple. They feel as though the Democratic Party has left them. So they are no longer considering themselves as part of this party's future or solutions moving forward. And I don't necessarily know if they're jumping into the right column and becoming Republicans or voting Republican. But I do know that you see many tried and true blue Democrats who used to be middle of the road, common sense kind of folks like myself, just opting out and saying, you know what, this party is not for me. Politics isn't for me. I'm just done, and walking away. And that's the danger to our democracy, more so than any kind of court case or anything else, is that the politics of our nation is now driving people to apathy, making it harder and harder and more to the extremes, which we see in both parties, having a louder say, while that 85% of our country sits down, remains silent, and chooses not to get involved. And that's where we have to push them to say, look, you don't have to be with the crazies, because the middle, however you want to disagree on things, we can still talk. You and I can still talk. Your viewers can still communicate with each other and folks like myself without going and wanting to cancel each other out simply because we have a disagreement.
Right. And I know exactly where you're coming from. We're still from the same country. We might have two different political parties, but we're both fighting for the love of this nation and for this nation in and of itself and our children and the future of this country and our communities. That's what we're here for. Do you ever want to just jump ship and say, forget it, I'm just done with these Democrats? You've thought of it, huh? But you just aren't going to do it.
No, you know what I've thought of? And actually, this is something that I've actually thought of with my husband and I. Have said at one point, when did we become the crazy ones? When did our belief that criminals belong in jail when they commit crimes, when did we become the odd ones for thinking that? When did we become the strange individuals who think that, there should be financial responsibility in government, or there should be, some positive things that government does, but without completely ruling over your life in every fashion. When did we become the crazy ones? Because that used to be a middle of the road Democratic Party concept.
Absolutely.
But because we've allowed the party to be hijacked by the extremists, they've taken it so far left of left, as I like to say, that now I look by default in their eyes as though I'm some sort of Republican. I actually called a MAGA guy countless times. All the while, I'm like, I haven't changed one bit. You all have gotten
if you get called the MAGA guy, you got to be worried now. You're like, okay, great. I'm not a MAGA guy, but they're calling me a MAGA guy, and now all of a sudden,
purple. I guess.
Well, yeah, you're like purple. You're like the purple guy who's being called the MAGA guy, and it's concerning because, by the way, the new commercial that President Biden has out, the new political ad, basically says that anybody who is MAGA is an extremist, like a domestic extremist. So you don't want to be considered that. So just because you believe, like I believe, that people should pay for the crimes that they commit, that they should be responsible for themselves, all of a sudden, that's like an extreme point of view to some of these left to the left.
And I see that all the time in my own city when I'm talking about something as basic as parental responsibility for your children. If you have 12, 13, 14-year-olds out here carjacking and robbing people with semi-assault weapons, and you as a parent don't care what your kids are doing, you should be held accountable. And it's amazing to see how many individuals now accuse me of being, a far-right extremist trying to criminalize family, when all I'm saying is exactly what all of us grew up with, was that if you did something, your parents found out about it, better believe you'd be hearing about it when you got home. It's, getting back to some of those basic tenets of our societies where we need to be, as opposed to focusing on all these new age hugs and kisses policies that we know don't work and only encourage all the worst in our society.
Well, and also endanger the lives of the people in our communities that we're trying to help most. Let me give you an example, because this is something that I think you can really address. In Gage Park, I love the homes there. The people are wonderful. It's a beautiful community. People take care of their property. One guy that I interviewed was remodeling his home with his wife. It was an old home. It was Senator Burke's old home. And he's just like, I'm afraid now to paint the fence line. I don't let my kids go outside because they're smoking pot in the street. It's the cops are trying to stop it. They come, but there's just no way, because there's so much flow of migrants coming in and out that the minute you move a certain group out of that area, another group is back in. They told me how much they support you and how they look to you for strength, because you're one of the few people, one of the few Democrats that actually stands up and says, no more. My community cannot put up with this anymore. My community needs to have a space for their children, needs to feel safe, needs to have a community that they can get back to where they can, live their lives. These are their homes. Talk a little bit about that struggle for you and, working. I mean, you're running for Congress now, and that's huge, because we need people like you in Congress. We need people with common sense, right, in Congress. And thank God you're running. But talk about what's happening inside these communities as you talk to them.
Well, I think what people in our communities, and indeed our city and our nation, are tired of are the unauthentic elected officials who are trying so desperately to stick to the script, as opposed to acknowledging the reality on the streets and addressing the problems from a place of truth right then and there. I'm the first to admit, yes, I opened up Gage Park, but I also know when something's failing or not meeting the standards we set.
Right.
That is why the community is not throwing me under the bus with all of this, because I understand that, look, the metrics that we had agreed to are not being met. It's okay to say we tried something and we didn't meet it. Now let's end it and move on. There's no shame in that. Actually, I think
there's no other resources, other ways. And just let me explain this to the audience so that they understand. You were put between a rock and a hard place. there are an overwhelming number of migrants in our country right now. In fact, we were talking about this earlier today. It totals up to about 17 states, the number of migrants that have come in under the Biden administration, 17 U.S. states. And I read those off. You guys listened to my podcast yesterday. You're going to know that. And so when they show up in Chicago, when you have frigid winters and winter chill, you absolutely have to have a place to put people. People cannot die on the streets. That's unacceptable. So once the Biden administration has let them in, they're in. Once they've made their way to Chicago, they're in. So you did what other people have done. They said, okay, look, we've got this community center. We have this area, a shelter where we can put people in. And they made a promise to you that in 3 months, that would be done. And that never happened. They've kept him there.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Keeping them going and growing, and the shelter keeps going. And the people
Do you think people are making money off of this? Let's talk about that. The money is where it's at, right? I mean, this is $40 million a month. There are NGOs working there and churches and other people they're getting money.
The grief peddling and poverty pimping in Chicago has reached epic proportions. And when you have scenarios where a janitor, with all due respect to the profession, can make $165 an hour in a shelter, a migrant shelter, we have an issue. We have a serious problem of fiscal mismanagement. And the fact that the most progressive mayor in Chicago history refuses to open the books and show who's getting paid and how and why, that's an issue for all of us. There's an accountability.
Why won't he do that? Why is there no accountability?
The mayor told aldermen, members of the city council last week, that he was unilaterally moving $95 million on his own that was appropriated through a legislative process because he didn't want to deal with a contentious vote from the members of the city council. I'm sorry if it's contentious, but that's our job. We are the ones responsible for the purse strings, and you cannot just choose to spend our appropriated dollars however you feel, because we owe an explanation to the Chicago taxpayers who are wondering, as you rightly pointed out, that money could have gone somewhere else. We have 1,800 seniors waiting for new roofs, new furnaces, and new porches for 3 years who have gone without an answer, but yet we miraculously find $140 million free and clear to use for a federal issue. We had the west side of Chicago that was flooded in July from a flash flood and could not help one single resident for 3 weeks clean out their basements or rebuild their homes. But yet this mayor, at the behest of our president, can find money in every couch cushion possible to pay for shelter and pay for all these not-for-profits to take advantage of the situation. It's disgusting. And I'm sure by the time we get to really digging into where the money went, this mayor, this president will all long be gone. The bill will still be due, and taxpayers will still be on the hook.
You know what? I could not have said that better myself, Raymond. That you're absolutely right. So I don't know. What do I need to do? Do I need to start FOIAing every single NGO that is operating inside the city of Chicago? Do I need to FOIA the mayor's office? Should we should I just get a troop of lawyers and just start slamming down FOIAs left and right? Maybe that'll do it. Maybe that'll shake them up.
I mean, you literally would have to FOIA communication every single day at this point, because they won't even tell me as a member of the city council what's going on. Because the mayor's team told me, even though I'm the one responsible for paying the bills with my 49 colleagues, they said, well, we signed a non-disclosure agreement with our partners, so we're not allowed to tell you what the details are. We're only required to show you the bill and let you pay it.
This is so crazy.
I mean, that's Putin-style nonsense, but that's what they're doing in Chicago right now.
Yeah, this is so insane, and it's our taxpayer dollars. It's our taxpayer dollars. This is, by the way, not just Chicago. I'm betting this is happening across the nation, in cities across the nation. I mean, we're in the wrong business, Raymond. You and I should start a non-for-profit. Blankets for the cold. I don't know.
I would make what I make in a year.
I could crochet.
Shelter.
I mean, I'm laughing about this, but I'm not.
If it wasn't so serious, it'd be funny. But let me tell you this, Sarah. There's a reason why the mayors of New York, Chicago, Denver, and other cities went to the federal government twice, not asking for an end to the border crisis, not asking for the fence to be rebuilt or for adjudication of merit hearings. They asked for money. And there's a reason why. They need $5 billion for these cities because it's not about the migrants at this point. Because what happens in 2026 is that all of that COVID money, that ARPA 1 and 2 that was produced from the previous administration, is going to expire. And any unused or unspent dollars will have to be paid back to the U.S. Treasury. So cities like Chicago that had $3 billion in federal money to get through COVID, if they haven't spent it, they have to lose it and give it back. So now what you need is a new reason for more money. And this is your new reason for more money so that you can continue to have the backdoor bailouts of major metropolitan cities through crisis after crisis after crisis. And that is the new playbook.
How does this ever stop?
When Congress finally grows a set and says no, when a president says no, fix the country, fix your problems, and let's move forward.
And when somebody like you, Raymond, stands up and lays it out as clearly as you have so that the American people understand what's really going on here. Because this, folks, is what is really going on here. You know, it's like those mystery books, mystery novels, or any great piece of work where it's like where you follow the money, any investigative story. This isn't because people actually care. Oh, we've got to feed them and clothe them. And yeah, in the beginning, everybody wants to do that. Nobody wants to see anyone suffer. But this is about, oh, wow, I have a revolving door of cash.
Yep.
I'm making $165 cleaning a toilet. Bingo. I'm the winner. And by the way, they really are the ones that deserve the $165 an hour when you're cleaning toilets. I'm going
to tell my husband that because I'm the one that cleans the bathrooms in my house. So if I could get half of that, I'd be very happy right now.
Me too. I'm going to tell my husband that because I do that too. I'm going to be like, you know how much they're paying in Chicago? I mean, but this is serious because you and I talked about also the humanitarian side of this. I mean, this is about people. This is about your constituents, but it's also about the migrant children. And you have a lot of migrant children in the city of Chicago right now. And, you know, finding homes for them. And you and I both said a lot of the people that are coming into Chicago, even those that have children, we don't even really know that those are their parents. We don't have any concept because there were no real thorough background checks on many of these people, right?
Exactly.
So we don't know.
We took them at their word at the border when they crossed in. We took them at their word when they were shipped here. Our city of Chicago gave them municipal IDs based on their word and their notice to appear papers. And we're assuming everything is right as rain. And hopefully it is, but you never know. It's a long, dangerous trek to get here, as you know. A lot of unfortunate, unsavory things happen. I mean, there could be children that parents were killed and someone just kept the child with them. We don't know. And that's one of the more dangerous things. But I think the other part, too, that I think has to be included in this conversation is that we hear a lot of, well, we need the immigrants. We need to help, build up a workforce. We need people who want to work in this country and things of that nature. All those kind of, oddly circular arguments that we keep hearing about from the supporters and proponents of the open border policy. And where I call BS on that is that if they were truly concerned about having a legitimized influx of individuals in this country to help be the workforce of the next generation, they could have started with all of the, in particular, partial to me, the Mexican undocumented who've been in this country for 3 decades. The DACA kids who've known no other country but this one. They could have started with those individuals before even worrying about folks from Venezuela, Colombia, or Nigeria, or Afghanistan, or Pakistan that are all coming through the southern border. We have millions of individuals who've been waiting for an opportunity to legitimize themselves here, who we have completely forgotten about, who the Democratic Party has completely forgotten about, all for the next latest and greatest social benefit, which is migrant asylum seekers.
Yeah, and I think you already mentioned the greatest social benefit on their part is the money that they're putting in their pockets. And you talk about this. Look, I was down there and engaged, and I was talking to folks, and I saw some Venezuelan migrants pull up in a truck, park their truck. You know, I saw videos of them rolling weed, you know, smoking some dope, like out on the streets. And, you know, hey, they want to smoke weed. You know, if it's okay, nobody's going to get arrested. The cops don't want to arrest them. That's fine. It's legal. But how do they afford it? Where are they getting the money? How are they buying the cars?
You got money for a car, got money for a weed, got money for booze. Then you should have money for shelter. Because I know if you lived in my house and had all that, and I had to pay for your rent for free, I would
be mad.
I'd kick you out in a heartbeat. Because clearly you don't need my generosity if you're able to afford all of that.
Right. Exactly my point. Have you figured out yet which NGOs or which government agencies are handing out this money? Because I've talked to folks. I even talked to some of the security teams I was with, and we were talking about it, and they had heard like, oh, hey, some of them are getting like $2,000 on a Visa card. Sometimes they're getting, they get the cell phones right when they come in. They're handed clothing. Are there any particular NGOs that you're looking at? Any particular groups that are giving more than others? Or
no, we've heard a wide range of who's getting what. No one will share the particulars because clearly they don't want transparency. They don't want to acknowledge the fact that, one, that we are continuing to subsidize and fuel the magnet that's drawing people here. And
yeah, because they're calling home. Well, they're calling home and saying, come on.
Well, they're doing more than that because they're actually then using their new debit card, cashing out and sending the money back to Venezuela, back to Colombia to pay for the next trip up here. So we are now, in fact, paying for this migration cycle to continue when all of those dollars meant for rent, meant for food, meant for other things are being cashed out and shipped back home, which is why you have individuals who are getting assistance yet having to still panhandle because they have no money. They are flat broke because it's all going back for the next person to follow in their footsteps.
That is just incredible. We are just funding the next migrant caravan. Period. We are funding it with and by the way, I can understand being cautious on talking about some of the individual NGOs. I will do that. I will take that upon myself to do a complete and thorough investigation and share every detail with you. Okay, to the alderman. Explain how the city of Chicago came up with aldermen. And then we're going to talk. And by the way, the districts, I was like, district police, you know, the district, it's different in Chicago. Things are different. Your pizza is great.
Thank you. Italian beefs aren't so bad either.
Yeah. Not too bad at all. Not too bad at all. So what's the alderman? Tell me where that came. Do you know?
Yeah, so the city of Chicago is divided into 50 wards, 50 districts, each represented by an individual called an alderman. Actually, now, technically, thanks to wokeism, we're called alder people because we have to be gender neutral.
Whatever.
But the term alderman actually is an old English derivative of an old English term, old as in older man, older as in senior, or elder man, as in like your elders. So that's where that came from like local English villages where the elder man of the village would be the one responsible for your, public civic life. So here that term is what we use to describe the individuals who represent one of the 50 wards in the city of Chicago. Our government style here is basically a strong council, weak mayor in theory. So the local alderman has more control over their ward by and large than probably the mayor of the city of Chicago does. There's nothing that can happen in a ward without the alderman's permission of it happening. So, it's a very unique and one of the last cities that actually still operates like this.
I love that. I now you're my elder. I love it.
But only
You're
three
my-
grace periods to prove it.
You're the wise man.
I'm the wise elder.
Soon to being. Well, how about Congress? Like, when did you decide, okay, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm running for Congress. How did your husband take that? Was he like, totally go for it? Or was he like, whoa, wait a minute?
No, I'm very thankful my husband, Hugo, has supported me as long as I get permission first to do whatever I have to do. Hey, happy spouse, happy house, right?
Yeah.
But no, he is great. And, he feels exactly like I do when it comes to public service, that it is a solemn responsibility. And he knows as well as I do, because he helps me with everything that I do, that, there's only so much I can do locally for all of these federal, national problems that have now literally been dropped on top of us. And we've seen this trend grow and grow over the years, whether it's the flow of illegal guns into our city, whether it's the lack of investment dollars coming back to our city, whether it's the lack of support for our education systems, and now the border crisis that's become our backyard crisis. All of those things I cannot address in my position. And my current congressman is an open borders congressman who's been there 6 years. He's been a career politician. He was elected when I was 6 years old and has never worked a real job a day in his life. So we need people who are authentic, who are true, and who believe in trying to come up with solutions as opposed to just continuing problems. And that's not him. So I said, you know what? I can either sit here and, complain to my heart's content that nothing ever gets done, or I could make a go for it and see what happens. So that's why I ran for alderman. Now that's why I'm running for this office now.
I tell you, you are a force to be reckoned with, Raymond. You are a force to be reckoned with. You are, I would be happy to be one of your constituents. I think that to have someone like you fighting for me is so important. And I just love the fact that, that you stand up and you'll say, hey, we got to restructure. We got to try something different. You're not afraid to just say it like it is and tell the truth. And you treat people with respect and dignity, and your doggies too. I'm gonna have to give that one, because I love my pets. I've got 4. I still got to catch up with you, but you do. And so I think that means a lot. I really think Chicago is a perfect example and a microcosm of what we're seeing across the United States. And I think if we start solving the problems in Chicago and what is going on there, and I think if we get more people, both Democrats and Republicans, Green parties, independent, libertarian, I don't even care. I don't care what you are, what your background is, as long as you love America and you love your community, you love your state, fight for it. Speak up and speak out, because I tell people all the time, you don't need to be worried. There are people, whether they're Democrat or Republican, that are going to have the same voice and the same concerns you have, as long as you speak up and speak out. Do you feel that you saw a lot more support once you started coming forward and you were speaking out? Did you see your community just kind of rally behind you?
My neighborhoods on the Southwest side, but indeed Chicago as a whole, always gravitate towards a real individual. Someone who could smell BS a mile away and will call a spade, as I was raised to do. And even early on in my career, when I was fighting gangs in my communities, everyone always said, well, you can't take them on. Nothing ever changes. Well, it's not until someone finally draws a line in the sand and doesn't move do people pay attention. And it worked when I was fighting with gangs. I wouldn't back down, even though they tried to put a hit on me twice. And it's working now on this issue, because while my mayor and everyone else is trying to become a national leader, pandering to the lowest common denominator, I'm rising above them all, because I'm speaking truth to what we all know is the reality that we must confront head on, which is, how do you promote a country that everyone wants to be in with an easier way to get here that doesn't require the laws to be manipulated or broken and putting all of us in jeopardy? It's very simple if you focus on the solutions as opposed to the politics of it.
And I love how you said that. It is very simple. It is a simple fix if you focus on the solutions. Well, I hope that you and I can work together and be a part of those solutions. And I really look forward to supporting you all the way through your congressional bid for
Sarah,
office.
I've already mailed you your voter registration down there. So we're going to have you register to vote here because that's what we do in Chicago. Don't worry about it. Absentee's already been sent. Vote by mail. We got you covered.
It appears that just is happening across the country as well. We're
ahead of the curve here. Don't worry. We got you covered.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, and as long as the other Democrats play nice in the sandbox with you, I'm okay with that. Otherwise, they're going to have a bone to pick with me, Raymond. It's going to be an awakening.
Tag team.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Sara Carter Show. You're great. I hope you come back on. And I know I took a lot of your time today, but I think I know that everyone who's listening to you right now and had a chance to get to know you has probably just fallen in love with you the way I have, and is finding the strength to fight back just the way you are. So thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure, Sarah.
Thank you again, Alderman Lopez, for joining me today. You're just a remarkable person, and your fight is all of our fights. We all appreciate your bravery on this issue, and you're giving us, and I know every single one of you out there that's listening, the strength to speak up and speak out. Please make sure you are subscribed to the Sara Carter Show here on your favorite podcast app. It really helps us. Leave a review and that 5-star rating. I tell you, it makes a huge difference, and I love to read them. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, where I'll retweet your posts, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless the beautiful city of Chicago and Alderman Ray Lopez's fight, and God bless the great state of Texas.